Hey, Scott here. I just wanted to share a project that I did actually last year, and unfortunately, life happened, and I didn't get back to showing the end result. And I've been using this snowblower that I repowered. The snowblower was an Ariens snowblower that was given to me by a neighbor, but the Tecumseh engine on it was shot, and I repowered it with a Briggs and Stratton engine. And here it is. This is what I've done.
Alright, so today we're looking at an Ariens 924 120, and that happens to be also known as an Ariens 1024 Professional. And this snow thrower, had a 10 horsepower Tecumseh engine on it. That engine has died. So we are going to be putting a new engine on it. And that new engine is this one down here. This is the Briggs and Stratton 14.5 gross torque snow engine. And the first thing that I want to mention is that the holes that are drilled here are for the Tecumseh engine. And since we're replacing it with a Briggs, I picked up this adapter plate. The adapter plate has studs on one side that would accommodate Tecumseh, studs on the other side that would accommodate the Briggs and Stratton. This plate, I believe, came from Small Engine Warehouse, smallenginewarehouse.com. Memory tells me about $25, another $10 or so for shipping, so $35 investment. But I tell you what, makes a huge difference, because rather than re-drill and re-tap, we just drop this into the existing holes like so, with this notch being forward, and then from underneath we put some nuts on there, and then we'll be able to drop the Briggs and Stratton engine right on top of that. Alright, stay tuned. Alright, so I've got this adapter that converts from a Tecumseh engine mount holes to a Briggs and Stratton. I picked up stop nuts for all 8 of the studs. So now we're going to drop it in place here, and then I'm going to tip it up and put those nuts and washers on the inside. Okay, so now we're looking at the underside of the snowblower, and you'll notice that those 2 bolts in there, and there are 2 more over here. Now those look like they're a little bit difficult to get to, but tell you what, you come up here and you shift the gear, and there you go. Now they're readily accessible. So that's done. Let's put this back down on its wheels and move forward. Alright, so now we got this this bracket bolted down where it needs to be, and there is a notch on the front of this bracket to tell you which way is forward, so make sure you pay attention to that. So we got our Briggs engine here. Seated all the way down. Now the engine that was on here had a larger shaft than this, and this is the actual sheave that came off of there, and you see that it's not going to work. So we've got a solution to that. We've got a shaft adapter with a special key. Shaft adapter slips on over there. You line up, of course, the keyway here on the shaft with this keyway, and then this key sits inside. And then just should move on onto that like that. Okay, so okay, so now before we actually bolt the engine down, I made the mistake of bolting it down and then realized I was premature. So with the engine unbolted, I'm just going to tip it back like this. We've got our adapter here, and we're going to slip our adapter over there. And it's going to require us to tap it on because it is pretty snug. Okay, and got to line up the keyway a little bit because this little key that's got to go in there, that special key, has to line up pretty good. I think that should do it. Oh, let's go back. Don't want to put too much pressure on it. Mess up the key. Let's try this one. There we go. Okay, so now we take our sheave here, we'll line it up, and I need a bigger hammer. I'm going to tap this on there. Now, one thing I find is after that's on there, we want to take that back off. And the reason being, is that adapter, well now, it's so snug in there it stays put. Okay? And the reason for all that is because we have to be able to place this on this shaft, but we don't know the exact placement yet in relation to how it's going to line up with the belts. And if it does have to stick out a little bit, I have a solution to that. Machine bushings. Here are machine bushings, and if need be, I'll slide the machine bushings on here before I put this back on. Or what I'll do is I'll put this on, line it up with where the belts are, and I may have to remove it a couple of times. I usually put a little anti-seize on here to make it a little slippery, but we're gonna have to get the spacing right. That's how I do it.
Alright, here we are back at the Ariens 1024 project. The repower went well. In fact, I did it last season, and then I just put the camera away and life got busy and stuff. But I wanted to get back to it and show you what ended up happening. Let me put a light here. You'll see here when we put the shiv in place, in order to line it up properly with the belts up and down here, I did have to put 3 of the machine bushings there, so that evened it out right. And then on the end, I bolted the end in place, so that's been running good. Now, one of the trickier parts of this build was that this chute control, you'll see the rod goes across the top of the engine. Well, the Tecumseh engine that was on here, this bracket right here, was actually mounted to the top of the Briggs, the Tecumseh engine, sorry. And there was no similar place on the top of this Briggs engine to mount it to. See the. So what I had to do is fabricate a bracket that could accommodate that issue, and this is what I came up with. On the front of the engine, you'll see I've got here we go, 2 bolts, this steel plate, and then this piece was welded up in an angle, and it's welded to a piece of angle iron, and then that angle iron then had bolts put into it, and that bracket was mounted to that. So that is one of the biggest modifications that needed to be done to make this engine work. So bit tricky for somebody who doesn't have access to that kind of tools, welding and metal fabrication tools. But fortunately, myself and my father-in-law both have that ability. So used it last year, thing works great. Used it for the first time this year, still running great. Alright, so one last thing to work on with this snowblower. Alright, so another thing that I want to work on next for this snowblower is to figure out, this thing has heated hand grips and a light, and the wiring that's coming out of the engine here is putting out roughly 12.6 volts in AC, and I know that the wires here are DC, and so we'll probably have to find a way to make that work. But we are one step forward.